Divorce is hairy and scary enough sometimes. It's we're not going to get into the whole relationship side of it. Obviously, we're talking about the money side, but there are definitely some things you want to consider. As I mentioned, I had recently been a guest on a Silver Divorce podcast, which aired last week. So we'll definitely put the link in our comments below so you can check that out. And it was a full hour of deep conversation. We're going to hit the highlights today, specifically on the top 5 mistakes made when going through a divorce. But when you kind of, without getting too personal, share your money experiences or what kind of was going through your head when all that was going on, and let's go into the issues.
Yeah. I mean, well, so unlike some people, we didn't have a ton of assets. We had sold a house a couple years prior to getting divorced and didn't have a ton to divide as far as that goes.
Mhm.
But certain things that I know we'll touch on, like taxes and um, how
Mm.
that's going to look, especially we have kids, under 18. So, figuring out who has them on the tax returns and things like that. Um, and just, bottom line is divorces are can be expensive. And I know for me personally, it really put me back probably a couple years as far as, the money it took, in the process and the money that now goes out monthly for that situation. So
Mm.
it's stuff that you don't really think through, and you're not planning for ahead of time. And so there's a lot of adjustments, a lot of things to think about. And if you're going down that road or in the very beginnings of that, I think, having some understanding of the things to pay attention to, the things to think about, and how to, do the best for everyone moving forward. I think
Well, and that's
this is a
that's
good
the key, right?
conversation to have.
Yeah, that's the key is, depending on, some divorces are nasty and some divorces aren't. I was fortunate, my ex-spouse and I, we did a non-contested divorce. So we kind of laid everything out on the table and said, okay, we can keep this or the attorneys can get a big chunk of it. And so we decided, hey, we've got a lot of things going on in the future, graduations, marriages, grandkids. We don't want it to be that tense little,
Mhm.
so, we just agreed to kind of put it all out on the table and kind of go through it and, kind of come out of it as friends and realize that, hey, we're still going to be around each other for literally the rest of our lives. So let's
Yeah.
make that as pleasurable of an experience as possible. So, when looking at the number one mistake is, typically you have one spouse that handles the finances over the other.
Mhm.
And it may not, I'm not just talking about paying bills, but I'm just talking about assets and things like that, and it's really critical that you understand, what you have, right? So, and I'm not talking about just assets, and that's the number one mistake is not understanding the asset values or the
Yeah.
liability because you get both,
Liability.
right? It's not just oh, okay, I'll take the assets, you take the bills. It doesn't work like that, and it varies by state. Make sure you talk to an attorney. When you're going through your divorce, or if you do a non-contested, you get a mediator and kind of go that process or whatever, and they'll kind of help you sift through all of that. But looking at the assets you have, whether it's the house or maybe you've got a second home, vacation home, lake house or whatever, vehicles, boats, toys, ATVs, things like that. Maybe there's assets in the house, weapons, things like that, or hunting weapons. Looking at that different aspect, you've got the 401k, the retirement accounts, and all that different
Mhm.
stuff. But then you've also got to understand what are the debts, and that's one of the things that
Yeah.
some spouses don't necessarily disclose to the other spouse that they have debts. We've seen that come up a couple of times in the planning process, where one spouse will have a secret credit card or two out
Yeah.
there, and it may be a higher balance, but that all kind of comes to the surface when a divorce happens. So
Mhm.
really understanding, okay, hey, the house we paid, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we paid 220,000 for it. So we'll just take 110 each. It doesn't work like that. You want to get, an
Right.
estimated value and don't go online and just kind of, okay, this is what it's worth. Get an appraisal from a licensed appraiser, right? That's one of the big things I want to put out there. Don't trust a realtor, I mean, not that realtors aren't trustworthy. That's not what I mean, but they're going to pull up, recent sales, but you want a licensed appraiser, non-biased, just, hey, here's what your house is worth.